everyone. I hope you're keeping well and safe. Um, I'm going to carry on with the biological psychology unit or biopsychology of stress. So I will call this session 3. Okay. So the focus will be on nervous system again, but different branches of the nervous system. Okay. So it's a continuation from previous session. I will do a little bit of recap as well based on what I covered last week. Last time, but I'm just going to read out the assessment criterion to you that this session would be focusing on. So the assessment criterion is 1.2, and it says or states, distinguish the roles of the somatic, the sympathetic, and the parasympathetic branches of the nervous system. Okay, so what those are basically are 3 subsystems of the nervous system. Okay, so I will go through each one in a little bit more detail, but I'm just going to do a little bit of recap on the nervous system and what, like I said, what I did last week. Also, just to simplify this criterion, because of the wording, it says distinguish. So there's no evaluation analysis involved or any type of discussion. All you would need to do for this assessment criterion is basically distinguish the roles mainly of those 3 systems: somatic, sympathetic, and parasympathetic. Okay, so you would need to focus on what the functions or roles are. Okay, I will also tell you where they are as well. So those, like I said, are subsystems of the nervous system. Okay, so going back to previous session, the nervous system is the main key system in the human brain, in the human body, that connects the brain to the body. Okay, and it's made up of 2 systems called central nervous system and something called peripheral nervous system. So central nervous system is made up of brain and spinal cord, which I covered last time, and I focused mainly on the brain. The other one is called peripheral nervous system, and that's the one I'm going to focus on now. Peripheral nervous system is a subsystem of the nervous system, and it is made up of 3 subsystems, further subsystems, and they are the ones that we are covering and that I'm mentioning: somatic system, parasympathetic, sympathetic system, and parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of information and read this out to you in terms of the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system consists of all the other nerve cells in the body. It is divided into somatic nervous system, which is concerned with voluntary movements of skeletal muscles, those attached to our bones, and the autonomic nervous system, which is concerned with involuntary movements of non-skeletal muscles, for example, those of a heart. Okay. The peripheral nervous system is used to transmit information between the central nervous system and the receptors and the effectors outside the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is linked up with receptors in external sensory organs such as the eyes and ears, and receptors in internal structures such as the stomach. Okay. Okay. So basically, the way it works is you have a peripheral nervous system, and it's split into somatic nervous system. So I'm going to focus now a little bit on somatic nervous system because that's also in the assessment criteria. Okay. Somatic nervous system is a subsystem, and it's mainly concerned with muscles, bones, skeleton, and movement around movement in our body. So, for example, what happens if, let's say, you want to kick a ball? The somatic nervous system would be responsible for that. So the brain will send messages through somatic system to our leg, okay, via bones, to kick a ball. Another example would be you touch hot radiator or hot oven. So you touch that and immediately you move your hand away. So that means the brain has sent a message via somatic system to your hand to move your hand away from oven or from the radiator because it's hot. So I'm just going to read this out to you again to give you a little bit of information on somatic system, okay, nervous system. The somatic nervous system controls the voluntary movements of our skeletal muscles. These skeletal muscles are also known as striated muscles because they have striations and or stripes. Nearly all of our movements, except those controlled by reflexes, involve the somatic nervous system. In other words, what that means is we have control over our movements. Okay, that's why they're called involuntary movements, because we do them by choosing to do. So we can make a decision. We can um, you can either kick a ball, for example, or you don't have to kick a ball, or you can put your hand on something hot or cold and leave your hand there, or you can decide to move your hand away. So these are involuntary movements. We decide uh, whether we want to do something or not. Okay. Also, so that's pretty much in terms of somatic nervous system. I'm now going to move on. Another part of the peripheral nervous system. Remember, the somatic nervous system is part of peripheral. I'm now going to move on to another part or another subsystem of the peripheral nervous system. And this is the one that I'm going to focus a little bit more on. And that's called autonomic nervous system. Okay, remember in your assignment you can abbreviate things. So autonomic nervous system would be ANS. Okay, somatic nervous system would be SNS. Okay, so I'm now going to focus a little bit more on autonomic nervous system, and I'm just going to read this out to you. Okay, just to give you a little bit of more information. Okay, um, the autonomic nervous system controls the movement of our non-skeletal muscles. The organs within the control of the autonomic nervous system include the heart, lungs, eyes, stomach, and the blood vessels of internal organs. The autonomic nervous system itself is divided into two systems or two branches called sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, so just to recap again, the autonomic nervous system, or ANS, is part of peripheral nervous system, or another abbreviation is PNS. Okay, and totally opposite to somatic nervous system. It is totally opposite because autonomic nervous system controls internal organs and glands of the body, which we have little or no voluntary control of. In other words, this is the system that controls our involuntary involuntary movements. Okay, so we have no control over them. We things that we can't control. For example, breathing, heart rate, um, the workings of the bowels, digestive system, certain things that we have no control of. They are continually happening, constantly, uh, on daily basis, and they are working 24/7, and we have no control of them, because if they didn't work, if that didn't happen, then we wouldn't be alive. Okay, so the autonomic nervous system is split into two branches or two subsystems, and they're called sympathetic nervous system or sympathetic branch and parasympathetic nervous system or parasympathetic branch. So now I'm going to give you some information on the roles and functions of these two. I'm going to focus on sympathetic branch or sympathetic nervous system first. So I'm just going to read this out to you. The sympathetic nervous system or branch takes over whenever the body needs to use its energy, as in emergencies, for example, the fight or flight syndrome. Okay? And the parasympathetic, which is dominant when the body is at rest and the energy is being built up. Although the two branches work in essentially opposite ways, they're both equally necessary for the maintenance of the delicately balanced internal state of something called homeostasis. Homeostasis means balance. Okay. Sometimes a sequence of sympathetic and parasympathetic activity is required. For example, so there needs to be balance between the two systems. Okay, even though they work in opposite directions, there needs to be a balance. Okay, so the sympathetic nervous system is called into play in situations needing arousal and energy. It produces increased heart rate, reduced activity within the stomach, pupil dilation or expansion, and relaxation of the bronchi of the lungs. These changes make people ready for fight or flight. The parasympathetic nervous system is involved when the body is trying to save energy. The effects of activity in the parasympathetic nervous system are the opposite of those of activity in the sympathetic nervous system. Okay. The parasympathetic nervous system does the opposite. For example, decreased heart rate, increased activity within the stomach, pupil contraction, constriction of the bronchi of the lungs. Okay. Both systems are equally important. For example, consider the case of someone having excessive activity of the sympathetic nervous system or very little activity of the parasympathetic branch nervous system. That person would almost certainly be a highly stressed person who finds life very demanding. Okay? So, in other words, we have these two branches which make up autonomic nervous system. Both are equally important, they both work in opposite directions and they do opposite things. Okay, so the sympathetic branch or sympathetic nervous system increases everything in our body. So, for example, if we are doing some kind of strenuous activity, such as a sports activity or running, everything in our body would increase. So, I'm just going to give you some examples. Our pupils will be dilated. Okay, our mouth would go dry. In other words, the system inhibits salivation. A saliva would get dry, or we get dry mouth. Okay, the system inhibits digestion. In other words, we lose appetite to eat. The system inhibits bladder contraction. Okay, the system accelerates breathing. In other words, we breathe faster. The system also increases heartbeat. So everything's increased. So imagine if you're running, okay, for a marathon, or doing housework, okay, or involved in a sexual intercourse. Everything's increased. The other branch or subsystem needs to also kick in, and the responsibility of that is to calm everything down, to do the complete opposite, to calm the body down. So in other words, our pupils go back to normal, they contract. Our lungs go back to normal, they contract. Okay. Our saliva comes back to us, so we no longer have dry mouth. Okay. The heartbeat slows down, so we start to breathe more normally. Okay. The parasympathetic system stimulates our digestion. In other words, we gain our appetite back. We want to eat again. So we need to have all this back, because if we didn't, and if the sympathetic branch was the one that was constantly active or in action, then we would be very stressed. We might end up with a heart attack. We might end up with a stroke or some other serious illness. Okay. That's why the parasympathetic system or branch is just as important, because it calms everything down. It calms the body down so that we don't, in other words, explode. Okay, so that's pretty much it in summary. Assessment criterion 1.2. So just to remind you again, the criterion states distinguish the roles of the somatic, the sympathetic, and the parasympathetic branches of the nervous system. And what I've done here for you, I've split those three and I've explained to you the roles of them. So they're all involved within the peripheral nervous system. Okay? And the peripheral nervous system is part of nervous system anyway. But then further down the line, the peripheral nervous system is split into somatic and autonomic nervous system. And then further down the line again, autonomic nervous system is split into two branches, and they are sympathetic and parasympathetic branches. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you found this helpful. Okay, bye.